Alright, picture this. Your alarm clock doesn't wake you up. Instead, it unrings, sucking its annoying beep back into its plastic shell, letting you gently fall back into sleep. But you can't, because you're already awake. You swing your legs out of bed, but instead of your feet hitting the floor seems to push your feet up, guiding you back under the covers. You find yourself perfectly tucked in, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the day to begin by ending. This isn't just a weird dream you're having after eating a dodgy kebab. Welcome to a world where someone, probably a scientist who got a bit carried away, has found the big red reverse button for time itself. It's a bit like living your life as a badly rewound VHS tape, complete with the weird, wobbly sound effects and the constant feeling that you've seen all this before. Literally. Your first challenge of the day is getting out of bed, which now involves a strange, floaty maneuver where you are propelled backwards out of your pajamas and into the clothes you wore yesterday. You drift backwards towards the bathroom, where toothpaste leaps from the sink onto your toothbrush, and the water from your shower gracefully flies off your body, leaving you dry and ready to get dirty again. So why doesn't this happen? Why do our days insist on moving stubbornly in one direction, from the boring past to the hopefully less boring future? Scientists have a fancy name for this, the arrow of time. It's not a physical arrow, which is a bit disappointing. I was hoping for a giant cosmic arrow floating in space, maybe with some cool flashing lights, pointed firmly towards tomorrow. But no, it's just a concept. It's the simple, observable fact that things in our universe have a preferred direction. An egg falls and breaks, but a broken egg never magically reassembles itself and flies back into your hand. This one-way street of time is what gives our lives structure. It's the reason we have memories of the past but not of the future. Think about it. You remember what you had for breakfast this morning, but you have no idea what you'll have for dinner tonight. Let's zoom in on a classic morning ritual making breakfast. In our normal, forward-moving world, this is a simple, satisfying process. You crack an egg, you whisk it, you cook it, you eat it. Done. But in a time-reversed world, breakfast is a bizarre and slightly unsettling performance. You'd start by sitting at the table with a full stomach and a dirty plate. The first thing that happens is that you begin to feel less full. Then, you'd find yourself leaning over your plate and, well, uneating. The perfectly chewed pieces of scrambled egg would fly out of your mouth, reassembling on the fork, which would then gracefully place them back onto the plate, forming a perfect, fluffy pile. The journey of the egg doesn't stop there. The pile of cooked scrambled egg on your plate would then slide back into the frying pan, which is cooling down on the stove. As it sits in the pan, the heat from the room would rush towards it, making the pan hotter and hotter. The scrambled egg would then uncook, transforming from a solid, fluffy mass back into a liquid yellow goo. The bits of salt and pepper you sprinkled on it would leap off the surface and fly back into their respective shakers. Now for the grand finale of the egg's reverse adventure. The liquid egg goo in the pan would gather itself together and pour itself upwards, back into the two halves of the eggshell. With a gentle thwomp, the two halves would seal themselves together, leaving you holding a single, perfect, unbroken egg. Communication in a time-reversed world would be an absolute mess. Imagine trying to have a simple conversation with a friend. You'd meet them, and instead of saying hello, you'd be in the middle of a sentence, talking backwards. The sound waves of your words would travel from their ear back into your mouth. Think about giving a speech. You'd walk backwards to the podium as the applause gracefully faded, with people pulling their hands apart instead of clapping. You'd then begin your speech with the closing line, "Thank you." Even a simple phone call would be a nightmare. Texting would be just as bizarre. You'd receive a notification for a message that isn't there yet. As you watched the screen, letters would appear one by one, forming the end of a sentence first, until the full message was there. The emotional impact would be staggering. How could you express love, anger, or joy if the words came out backwards and were immediately forgotten? It would be a world of profound isolation, where every attempt to connect with another person would simply be the undoing of a connection that had already happened. So what's the big scientific reason for this one-way time street? The main culprit has a very grand and slightly intimidating name, the second law of thermodynamics. Now stay with me here. The basic idea is actually pretty simple. In fact, it's probably something you already know from looking at the state of your own bedroom. The law basically says that things in a closed system tend to get messier over time. Scientists call this messiness entropy. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a box of Lego with all the red blocks on one side and all the blue blocks on the other. Now, shake the box. What happens? The blocks get all mixed up. This principle is everywhere. When you drop an ice cube into a drink, it melts. The ordered, crystalline structure of the ice cube turns into liquid water molecules spread throughout the drink. The heat from the drink spreads out, and the whole system becomes more uniform and, well, messier. The arrow of time is just the universe's relentless quest for maximum messiness. A scrambled egg is messier than a whole egg. A broken glass is messier than a whole one. A memory is a neat, ordered pattern in your brain, while the future is a chaotic soup of infinite possibilities. Let's take this idea of reversing time and apply it to the big picture. Not just your breakfast, but everything, the entire universe. If we hit rewind on a cosmic scale, the consequences would be honestly mind-boggling. The famous phrase, "Don't cry over spilt milk," would become meaningless because you could just watch the puddle of milk on the floor gather itself up, fly through the air in a graceful arc, and pour itself back into the glass. Think about a magnificent old oak tree in a field. In a reverse time world, you'd watch it get smaller every day. Its leaves would fly up from the ground and reattach to the branches in autumn. The branches themselves would shrink back into the trunk until it was just a tiny sapling, then a seed, which would then bury itself back into the ground. And what about us? The process of aging would flip. Every day we would get slightly younger. Wrinkles would fade, gray hairs would regain their color, and old aches and pains would disappear. It sounds like the ultimate fountain of youth. But the process wouldn't stop. The universe itself would be heading back towards its own beginning. The vast, expanding cosmos would start to contract. Galaxies would rush towards each other instead of flying apart. Everything would be hurtling back towards a single, incredibly dense and incredibly hot point. We would be living through the history of the universe, but backwards. From its cold, vast future back to its fiery, compact origins. Let's bring it back down to Earth. Forget the cosmos and imagine a regular Tuesday at the office, but in reverse. You'd arrive at 5 p.m., feeling strangely accomplished. You'd sit at your desk, and a pile of completed paperwork would appear. Your job for the next 8 hours would be to painstakingly undo it. You'd take a finished report and start deleting the words, sentence by sentence, until you were left with a blank document. You'd take signed contracts and carefully erase the signatures. Your inbox would slowly fill up with unread emails that you would then have to unsend to your colleagues. Meetings would be a special kind of corporate purgatory. You'd all file into the meeting room as a decision was being unmade. The meeting would start with the final action points, which would then be debated in reverse until they became vague, unresolved ideas. You'd all file out more confused than when you went in. The 3 p.m. coffee run would involve everyone returning their empty mugs to the kitchen, where they would magically fill with hot coffee, which you would then undrink before returning to your desk, feeling less caffeinated. Water cooler gossip would be a strange dance of unsharing secrets. This all leads to a massive, brain-melting question. If time actually started running backwards, would we even be aware of it? We experience time's arrow through cause and effect. Our brains are wired to form memories of past events, not future ones. But if time were reversed, cause and effect would be flipped. Our thoughts are electrochemical processes in the brain, creating ordered patterns from chaotic neural firings. If time were reversed, our brains would have to run backwards too. We wouldn't be forming new thoughts, we'd be unforming old ones. We wouldn't be perceiving a reversed world, we'd be part of it, our consciousness flowing backwards along with everything else. Let's put aside all the brain-bending physics and ask a simple question. Imagine there was a switch, a big, shiny, red button on the wall of your living room. One side says forward, and the other says reverse. You have complete control over the arrow of time in your own little bubble. What would you do with that power? You could rewind the last 10 seconds to unsay that dumb thing you just said. You could relive the best meal you've ever had, over and over again. It would be like having the ultimate undo button for life. But would a life without mistakes, without spontaneity, even be worth living? The science says it's impossible, a fantasy that breaks the most fundamental rules of the universe. But it's fun to imagine. It makes you appreciate the simple, forward-moving, egg-scrambling, irreversible reality we live in. Or does it? The choice is yours. What would you do?